Introduction of Hooke's law. When the force is applied to an object, it may be able to stretch and change its shape. Any object which can go back to its original shape after the force has been removed is an elastic object. Work is done to an elastic object to change its shape. This energy is not lost, but stored as elastic potential energy. The elastic potential energy is then converted into kinetic energy when the force is removed, and the object returns to its original shape. The ability of certain object to return to its normal shape after experiencing distortion can be referred to as restoring force. Hooke's law is only a first-order linear approximation to the real response of springs and other elastic bodies to apply forces. Many materials will noticeably deviate from Hooke's law well before those elastic limits are reached. This can be expressed mathematically. F equal negative kx. F is the force applied to the spring, either in the form of strain or stress. X is displacement of spring with a negative value demonstrating that the displacement of the spring once it is stretched. K is the spring constant. F is exerted on a vertically suspended spring. The length of the spring changes an amount y from its initial length. Experiment shows that F is directly proportional to y. That is, F equals ky, whereas k is called the spring elasticity. The minus sign in the equation below shows that the restoring force is always in the opposite direction of the displacement, F equals negative ky. Total elongation was longer for serial than for parallel springs, and increased proportionally to the number of serial springs and inversely proportionally to the number of parallel springs.
First, we need to hang a spring vertically. Next, measure and record the original length of the spring. Next step, we hang a load of 100 gram on the hook. Then, measure the elongation of the spring using a ruler and record it as x1. Repeat step 3 and 4 to find x2, x3, x4, x5, x6, x7, x8 and x9 with total masses 200 gram, 300 gram, 400 gram, 500 gram, 600 gram, 700 gram, 800 gram and 900 gram. Record all the masses and elongation.
So here is the data analysis of the Hooke's law experiment in the form of graph. So both springs were weighted. We're using the same weight, beginning at the force of 1 Newton or 100 gram to 900 gram or 9 Newton. So you can see here, even in the beginning, there's difference of deformation of the spring, even though the weight is the same, which is 1 Newton. This is due to the K of the string, the constant variable. Sorry, not constant variable, or constant factor of characteristics of the spring. So as you can see here, there's changes to both of the springs that can be observed, even though the spring one deformed more at the beginning of the usage of 1 Newton, but it deformed less and less compared to spring of Y2, whereas spring Y2 deform more and more as more weight is added to the spring. That's all for the techniques in the form of graph. Thank you.
Next,
I will continue with the discussion part. First of all, according to the graph, force is proportional to spring elongation. It demonstrates that the spring followed Hooke's law. The trend in average measurement rises as mass rises. The elongation of spring was impacted by the spring force. This is due to the fact that the larger the spring force, the longer the spring elongation. Next, I will justify about does a rubber band and helical spring follow Hooke's law. Okay, Hooke's law is an example of elasticity, which is the quality of an item or substance that allows it to return to its original shape after being distorted. So, rubber bands expand according to Hooke's law. The physical parameters of the rubber band, such as cross-sectional area, determine the force limit for which Hooke's law applies. Rubber bands with a larger cross-sectional area and higher K values follow Hooke's law for greater applied pressures than bands with a smaller cross-sectional area. Spring scales are subject to Hooke's law too. The scope of Hooke's law is fairly vast. The capacity of a helical spring to return to its original shape after being distorted is known as restoring force. This restoring force is often proportional to the amount of stretch experienced. Next, I will continue my explanation on why some processes are not reversible. So, the frequency-dependent phase shift between pressure and density leads to irreversible losses of wave energy. But the medium's qualities can be reversed. It signifies that the medium returns to its equilibrium position after a wave has passed through it. On the other hand, a passing wave in a hysteretic medium leaves behind residual stresses and strains, and both the wave and the medium's behavior is irreversible. Last but not least, the common causes of error while conducting this experiment is in observational as example error in reading meter scale. As a precaution, we need to measure the length of the spring with the position of eyes perpendicular to the scale of the ruler to avoid systematic errors that could affect the data. I guess that's all for discussion part. So we'll continue our presentation with conclusion.
Hi, my name is Muhammad AMIRUL by ASMADI AFAND, metric number TH21037. So I will conclude the lab experiment report. In conclusion, the strength of a spring is directly proportional to the applied force. In symbol, F equal to Ks, where F is the force, S is the strength, and K is the constant proportionality. Based on the graph force against stress, a straight line has been plotted so it shows that Hooke's law is correct. During the experiment, parallax error occurs because the eye is not parallel with measurement marking when taking the reading stress of spring. It is also recommended that experiments must be conducted by multiple of trial with shorter difference on the increase in mass of the load, the observed more of behavior, the load, and the increase in length of the spring.